Yeah, so you're talking, at a time with the classic gear. The reason I'm so adamant about it right now is that during that time period from the 1880s to 1930s, you had more people camping per capita in the United States than any time before or since. Everybody was camping. It was the golden age of camping, no question about it. As far as the industry goes, I read something the other day in 1929 that the outdoor recreation market was like $3.3 billion industry in 1929. So if you adjust that for inflation, you're over like $150 billion today. So you're talking about a huge industry back then. So the tendency was to start buying more gear and going out with more gear as opposed to using these skills. Well, if you're talking about 1880s, you're talking about a very, very short time from when the frontier was being pushed across the United States and the people were using skills that came from that frontier period. So you're talking about friction fires and flint steel fires, and you're talking about creating all of your gear from what was at hand in the outdoors. So once we got to that point, then we started adopting all of this technology. A lot of it had to do with the fact that it was because it was romantic to do that stuff, but there were so many people doing it that we were creating huge amounts of impact. You had tyros and greenhorns and all kinds of people out there just tearing the place apart. And so there was this new movement to reduce impacts by interjecting equipment as opposed to using some of these old traditions. So as a result, we made a very conscious choice to shift from knowledge and skill to the ability to manipulate technology to intervene in our impacts. And we're there today to where we have pushed so much technology into our experience in the outdoors that we no longer experience the outdoors. We experience technology in the outdoors. And so we don't interact with our environment anymore. So once we do that, then we just make this very, very specific line of demarcation as to what we're going to, or how we're going to experience the environment, and how we're going to let these other things do the job for us. And so this idea of going back and recapturing these skills, that's why I'm doing this with classic camping and camping in the old style, is that these skills were the norm clear up until probably the early 50s, and then all of a sudden they just went away because of the fact that we decided that they were inappropriate, and so we started training people that the old ways were bad, and that those old ways were bad ethics, and that the new ways of buying lots of gear and having all of the space age technology that we have now are good ethics. And I like Yvon Chouinard's definition of ethics, and that is you can do what you want to do as long as you don't mess it up for the next guy. And so that doesn't mean that I have bad ethics just because I don't adopt lots of modern technology, because I know the value of what I can learn from the environment and from these old skills about myself and about the environment. And I'm not willing to trade that off for the convenience and the protection of modern technology. And I think more and more people are getting this idea as well, that wait a second, we're going out there, but we're really not having any experience with the outdoors because we're traveling around in a bubble. I mean, I could go camp in the middle of a gymnasium and do everything that a person does in the backcountry today, including cooking my meals and setting up my structure, and then pick up and leave the middle of that gymnasium floor and leave no impact at all. That's fine, that's great, but why do I have to go to the wilderness camp anymore if I can camp in the middle of a gymnasium? So that what I do has no relationship to the environment in which I operate anymore. And to me, that's sad. We should be relating to that environment in a very different way.
And what happens when you relate to the environment using traditional camping skills?
Once again, you learn consequences, you learn planning, you learn forethought, you learn the fact, okay, the clouds are coming in, well, gee, I don't have to pay attention to those, I just put on my Gore-Tex and go about my business. Well, no, if you don't have Gore-Tex and you use simple technologies, you've got to plan ahead, you've got to think. To me, being in the outdoors has always been a thinking man's sport. We've eliminated thinking in favor of technology. And so we're just walking around, like I said, in this bubble, thinking that we're in the outdoors and we know a lot about the outdoors, and we don't. We know very little about it, from the plants that we walk by, to the trees that surround us, to the woods that we use for our fires. Everything, to me, that could be nature-based, that teaches you something about that environment. Now, yes, you can be in places to where you can create environmental damage if you're not careful. But if you use really, really good technique, you can mitigate just about every single environmental impact that could be created just by using good technique. And there are very few things that you can't do today that can't be done in a very traditional way that still minimizes impact.
Can you give us an example of one that people think, well, that would cause that causes too much impact to do?
Yeah.
And then describe how you would do it.
Probably the most glaring one would be fire. I mean, any land manager is going to say, well, if you're going to build fires, you're going to create impact. That's true. But back in the old days when we were running courses at Boss, I mean, we used to go out with 40 students in a course, and we would do 2 sections of 40, and we would do that 4 times a year. But we could travel from place to place, and because of the fact that we knew that the life cycle of fire, that when you put wood on, when you don't put wood on, how fire burns, when's the best time to cook, when's the best time to heat, you understand that whole technology, that by the time you're ready to leave in the morning, everything is burned down to white ash rather than leaving this big fire pit full of charcoal that you've got to either crush up or do something with because it's not going to go away. But if you plan everything properly, it'll burn down to white ash, and then you just scatter that white ash to the plants, and they benefit it. Everybody's happy, but you leave no impact, and you just walk away from it. But the idea that, okay, you put big chunks of wood on, and then when you're done with your fire, you put it out with water. Now you've got a mess that you've got. It's just laziness. It's just it's not even laziness. It's just lack of education. But we've said, because fires are bad, rather than teaching people how to do them properly, we just say they're bad, don't do it anymore. So you can even mitigate that by saying, okay, let's make tin can stoves, to where now you can actually create a combustion chamber that is going to make the burning of wood materials so efficient that you can cook an entire meal on a bundle of little twigs. But once again, that's an understanding of fire, the physics behind it, how this whole thing works, being able to mechanically create a stove from a recycled number 10 can that somebody was going to throw away anyway. But once you master an understanding of that, I got one out here on the table right now that we made over here this morning that we put a bundle of sticks in there, and it burned for an hour and a half. It burned at boiling temperature for an hour and a half on one little bundle of fuel. They're that efficient. So once again, it's just understanding, okay, how can I still benefit from using good fuel, simple materials I gather from the wilderness, yet maximizing the efficiency of that just through a little bit of modern science.
And what happens when you go to the outdoor store and you purchase all the ready-made gear? What happens to the learning?
Zero. I mean, all you've done is just traded dollars for donuts. You're not getting anything in return. You learn how to manipulate a piece of technology that has nothing to do with the environment. Not only does it have nothing to do with the environment, the people who sell it to you say that this thing leaves no trace. So they're convincing you that the very product that you just bought, that requires minerals and resources and manufacturing and transportation and refinement and packaging and all that stuff, creates no impact. Baloney. To me, it's a scam. And the people who are backing this new quote-unquote outdoor ethic are all the manufacturers who are selling you that stuff, telling you that you're creating no impact. To me, it's just a bogus operation. So not only are you not learning something, you're getting taught baloney. And so to me, it's all connected. I think we need to understand where these basics come from, and I think if people did, they would understand how valuable they are.
So when you take somebody that doesn't know any of this and you put them into an environment in a situation where they have to learn with good instructions so they can learn and they can learn well, what happens to that person?
I'm not sure I follow you.
We do this work for personal change on the wilderness therapy side of things, right? But even at Boss, like it's not billed really as like this is going to change your life, but I mean after a 28-day course it does, right? Like it's just what happens. You can't avoid it. So just can you speak a little bit to that process for people, what you see happening?
Well, I mean, to me, that's education. And we say, well, what's education? Well, education is if you're doing it properly, if you're doing it in a way to where you're trying to create an intrinsic motivation for people to learn, the best way to do that is to put them in a position where they're uncomfortable. And once you put them in a position where they're uncomfortable, they either have to stay there and deal with the discomfort, or they have to figure out a way to get back into balance again and be comfortable again. State of dissonance. You create a state of dissonance that makes them figure out that they've got to put themselves back into this place of comfort, or else they're going to just be miserable all the time. Once you create that, in order for them to get back into comfort, something has to happen. They have to learn something. They have to apply an old skill. They have to learn a new skill, whatever. But regardless what happens, they have to change. Change physically, spiritually, mentally, whatever it is, they have to change. That's education right there. Because now they've made a move based upon an intrinsic motivation that came from learning new skills and the application of old skills. That's what it's all about. That's change. So regardless of to what level of change that takes place, it could be something as simple as a light goes on saying, oh, I didn't realize this could happen, to where it could be a total life-changing epiphany, depending upon what their background is and how impactful the experience is. That's the business that we're in. We're not in the business of changing people's lives. We're in the business of creating structured experiences that will allow people to encounter them to change their own lives. Whether that happens or not is up to them.
Thanks for watching. Please like this video and subscribe. The Primitivus Project is made possible by the generous sponsorship of Wingate Wilderness Therapy. To learn more, visit wingatewilderness.therapy.com.